regular meeting of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation Commission. We're glad you're here. We'll start with roll call. Regular meeting of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation Commission. We're glad you're here. We'll start with roll call. Regular meeting of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation Commission. We're glad you're here. We'll start with roll call. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. Regular meeting, and Ken Cunningham will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand. Start with roll call. Here. So JD, would you please introduce our guests?
Thank you, and I will apologize for the heater going out
JD, would you
as well
please introduce
over
our guests?
the weekend at some point. So hopefully we'll get that back up and running soon. We have heater going. Nora Hall, one of our artists. The weekend at some point. So hopefully we'll get that back up and running soon. We have heater going. Nora Hall, one of our artists. The weekend at some point. So hopefully we'll get that back up. Rick Grunman from the Wildlife Foundation. Nora Hall, one of our artists. The weekend at some point. So Kevin Bennett, Rick Grunman from the Wildlife Foundation. Ella one of our artists. The weekend at some point. So Kevin Bennett, Quill Grunman from Laura McIver, Quill Forever. And at some point. So James Deach, Kevin Bennett, Quill Grunman from Laura McIver, Quill Forever. And
our next item is
James Deach, Kevin Bennett, Quill Grunman, Laura McIver, Quill Forever.
So we will postpone that. Next item is
James Deach, Kevin Bennett, Quill Grunman, Laura McIver, Quill Forever.
So we will postpone that. Next item is
James Deach, Kevin Bennett, Quill Grunman, Laura McIver, Quill Forever.
So we will postpone that. Next item is
James Deach, Kevin Bennett, Quill Grunman,
Good morning.
Laura McIver, Quill Forever.
Laura, I'll have you go ahead and head this way. As usual, we're glad to see Laura and Quill Forever. Good morning. Appreciate their partnership. Laura, I'll have you go ahead and just do an outstanding job. We're glad to see Laura and Quill Forever. Good morning. Appreciate their partnership. Laura, I'll have you go ahead and just do an beneficiary of such hard work. So I'll turn it over to Laura and Troy to talk about it. Appreciate their partnership. Laura, I'll have you go ahead and just do an beneficiary of such hard work. So I'll turn it over to Laura and Troy to talk about it. Appreciate their partnership. Laura, I'll have you go ahead and just do an
Good morning. How are you? So I am pleased to introduce Troy Ellison. You have met him probably once or twice before. So I am pleased to introduce Troy Ellison. You have met him probably once or twice before. So I am pleased to and Troy Ellison. They have been really on a mission to try to do a lot of the 3-to-1 match. And they have been really on a mission to try to do a lot of the 3-to-1 match. And they have been really on a mission to try to do a lot of the 3-to-1 match. And they have been really on a mission to try to do a lot of the 3-to-1 match. And they have been really on a mission to try to do a lot of the 3-to-1 match.
I'll make this short. Wasn't planning on getting up here, but John Bella, who is our habitat chair, has been working diligently. Wasn't planning on getting up here, but habitat. John Bella, who is our habitat chair, has been approved. The first one is from West Habitat, Northwest. John Bella, who is our habitat chair, so we're doing our approved. The first one US dollars. It is also going to be John Bella WMAs are have 2 here. So we're doing the second one was for equipment US dollars. It is also going to be John Bella WMAs are have 2 here. The second one was for equipment. That's going to be in Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a 3-to-1. The second one was for equipment. 6,000 Black Kettle and Packsaddle areas. This one is also a
Thank you again. I really appreciate that partnership and everything that it does. Thank you again. I really appreciate that partnership. Next 2 items, if Nels Rotefeld has anything that it does. I'm sorry, yes, thank you. We do need to, do I have a motion to approve and to accept? Second.
Commissioner Barwick? Aye. Commissioner Mabry? Aye. Commissioner Holder? Aye. Commissioner Dillingham? Aye. Commissioner Kane? Aye. Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you again. All right, Nels, got a couple of presentations.
Commissioners, it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Bergen. Michael will be running point on these next 2 items. Michael's a senior communication and education specialist and been with the department about 15 years. Michael's also a squirrel hunting enthusiast for those who are keeping score. Michael. Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Today. Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all.
Keeping score.
Not as many squirrel hunters nowadays, are there? Thank you all for having me. I always appreciate. Enjoy the chance to visit with you guys about what the Communication and Education Division is doing. Of course, today, though, we're actually here to recognize some very fine Oklahoma artists as it pertains to our Oklahoma Duck Stamp Design Contest. Of course, our Oklahoma Duck Stamp program is a program that's designed to raise funds for wildlife, for waterfowl habitat. And we do that through a duck stamp design contest, and this program's been around since 1980. And every year the Wildlife Department hosts a contest where artists from all over the country compete, and they put forth their best artwork that features a given waterfowl species for that year. And of course, artists from all over the country are competing in this. And honestly, only a few dozen people a year submit artwork, and that's in part because it's such a challenging contest, because not only do you have to be an expert painter, but you have to be an expert on the species itself, because it's judged based on biological accuracy. It's got to look accurate and look right, and the habitat has to look right. And boy, I mean, Wade Free, I've seen him judging on the judging panel with a magnifying glass before. So it's very important that the winner knows everything about, you know, even down to the webbing or the eyelid, just the species itself. Someone who can portray that well, there's just very few people across the country who can even do that. So, of course, the program itself is used to raise funds for wildlife habitat. We do that through selling those stamps to collectors. The winner of that contest is is printed on a stamp for that year. And then collectors and hunters can buy those, in addition to actual waterfowl hunting privileges, which is what most of the hunters buy, which allows them to go and pursue waterfowl in the state of Oklahoma. So in 2021, we sold several hundred of the stamps and then over 20,000 of the actual privileges to hunters. Today, though, we're recognizing the winners of our most recent contest. It featured the bufflehead, and we have our winner here with us today. Michael, if you want to come up, this is Michael Donahue. I'll introduce him now. He's from Broken Arrow. Michael has been a waterfowl artist for years. He actually entered the Oklahoma contest years ago, and I think you said you placed second or third in a few of those several years ago. Stopped doing those contests for a while and then recently returned. In the last couple of years he's entered, and then this year, of course, he has won. So congratulations to Michael. Excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and just so that you guys can see it over there, but I also want to show it to you up here. Yep. So everyone in the audience can see a little closer. There it is. And again, the original is over here on the easel, but this is a version for everyone to see. Michael, we appreciate you entering. What I'd like to share with you all that's particularly unique this year is, like I said, artists from all over the country enter these contests. And most years, you have winners and honorable mentions from all over the country as well. It's randomized, and so we don't know who they are when our panel of judges is selecting the winner. We just have our expert biologists looking for the accuracy, and then, of course, several of you commissioners have been involved in judging that contest before. But this year, our winner, Michael, as well as two of our honorable mentions, are Oklahomans. So that's pretty neat, considering that you have to be an expert, and we're usually drawing artwork from all across the country. So congratulations to Michael. Our honorable mentions, I want to show you those. Did Shay, or are you, okay, Shay, good, I'm glad Shay made it. Shay, come on up here. This is Shay Meyer, and he was one of our honorable mentions. He's from Stratford, and I'm glad you were able to make it. Welcome, congratulations. One of our honorable mentions, again from Oklahoma. And then we also had London Peterson. She is not with us today, but she is a teenager. And what's great about London is the Sutton Avian Research Center partners with us, and we partner with them on their youth contest, their youth art contest every year. And she was an honorable mention in their contest this year, as well as a recipient of one of our special ODWC art recognition awards. So very cool to have 3 Oklahomans in that running this year. Thank you to Michael and Shay for their work, and just wanted to give you all a chance to recognize them. And then also, of course, our other honorable mention was Greg Fritz from Davenport, Iowa.
Yes, okay.
It's a great testament to Oklahoma, and so I just wanted to give you guys a chance to meet these folks and tell them congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. It's some amazing talent, and I encourage all of you to get over there and look at it closer, because the monitors just don't do it justice. It's really fine, fine art. Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate the artists, and I'd also like to let people know how important this wildlife art is. If you can't be out in the woods, I think that's the next best thing. And to show you how valuable these things are, the Copley Art Auction last July sold a painting of a bob white quail for $90,000. Wow. And in that sporting art raised $4.4 million. So I think it's pretty valuable that we have these artists, especially in Oklahoma. So congratulations, guys. I appreciate that.
Yes. Congratulations.
And also, Commissioner, I'll point out on that same deal, speaking of the value that people place on wildlife art, we've been doing the stamp contest since 1980, and we have compiled a complete set of those stamps from 1980 to present, and that set will be part of this next upcoming Oklahoma Outdoor Adventures raffles. It'd be one of the things that people can basically go on and bid for, get raffle tickets for, and have a chance to win that through that adventure program. So that should be a neat one to see, the attention that gets as well.
That's a lot better use of the art than keeping in some vault somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah. We've had them stored away, and that's going to be a good way to get those out there and continue to show the importance of conservation. Artwork is going to help us do that, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
I guess I'm just going to stay right up here, right, Nels? Okay.
Number 9.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Well, we'll just move right into it. Speaking of artwork, we've been recognizing our duck stamp winners. What I also would like to talk about regarding artwork in Oklahoma, of course, we all see art, and as hunters and anglers, when you see artwork, it always has a way of moving you and gets you thinking about the outdoors, maybe makes you want to get out in the outdoors. Maybe it's a waterfowl species, or a fish, or an image of some turkeys or some deer that automatically maybe triggers a memory or a thought about hunting or fishing and makes you want to get out there and enjoy it. And that's kind of the idea behind it, and the ability that artwork has to connect people to the outdoors is what we're kind of continuing on with this agenda item. We're always looking to recruit and retain sportsmen, and one of the ways we do that is we try to engage them with products and services that help them feel support, when they're hunting and fishing. Given all this, we do a program here where sportsmen can buy a hard card license, and it will hold up to 9 licenses. We've all probably seen those hard cards, but we want to recognize our artists for those this year. We have with us Nora Hall. Come on up, Nora. Nora has been one of our artists before. She did the elk that we had on one of our recent year's cards, and she also is going to be the featured artist on one of this year's cards, this black bass. You can see it large over there or up here on the screen. Nora did this as part of a full collection of Oklahoma species that she has put together. Nora and her business partner are the owners of the Oil and Clay Studio in Norman, Oklahoma, and they've agreed to partner with us again this year with this painting. So thank you very much, Nora. We appreciate that. We know that people are going to really enjoy this card, and it's going to be something sportsmen can carry, and they'll see your artwork every day when they're hunting and fishing. So this is Nora Hall.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you. Of course, our other featured artist this year is Carolyn Mock. She was unable to be with us, but this is her piece, and you can also see it over there. And so both of these artists are fantastic Oklahoma artists that are going to help us put the conservation message out there this year. Each of you will see there at your desk, we've provided a license card in each of those designs for you guys. So you guys can have those and carry those with you. They're durable, waterproof, and that's kind of, besides just being great artwork, that's also an appeal to our sportsmen. It's a service to them to be able to carry that on their person while they hunt or fish. Of course, they can carry that. They can carry the app, or they can carry a paper copy of their license. Of course, one of the complaints or one of the issues with the paper copy of your license is that you can spill coffee on it, or damage it, lose it. Lots of things can happen to that. So the hope there and the service there is that the sportsman can carry it on like a credit card style license, and it's just $5. So I never miss a chance to show people this model right here. This is the outdoor recreation adoption model. A great deal of research went into this. This is basically a lot of research that sums up what it takes to make a long-term hunter and angler. And again, I never miss a chance to tell people social support and continuation with support is a key stage in someone going from being just a visitor or someone who has tried the outdoors, going from that to then being a long-term user of the wildlife resources. And so we take our role in social support and providing continued support to them seriously. We do that through a range of communication and education projects, but I view these cards as one of those things. Providing them a product that they can carry in their pocket as a service is just one extra small step that makes it easier and shows that the community around them supports their outdoor pursuits. And so when that is taking place, it's more likely, research tells us, that those people engage and continue to hunt and fish. We've got lots of and that's everything that our folks do is really geared toward in addition to conserving the resource, serving our sportsmen so that they feel supported and able to continue on hunting and fishing. And so, why is this important? Well, you know, I'll just point out to you, last year we sold 75,000 of those cards. Of course, it was different artwork, and this year we expect to sell just as many or more. And a portion of every one of those cards is put into what we call R3, or which is Hunter and Angler Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation. We put that into a marketing fund that, together with our partner, Brandt Information Services, our licensed vendor partner, we pursue a range of marketing tactics that usually ranges from everything from online digital ads to a range of emails that are provided through the Go Outdoors system, such as onboarding or abandoned cart emails, emails that go to people that say, well, you started to buy a license, but you haven't finished. Can we help you finish buying your license? Things like that. All of those little things are key steps along the customer journey that show that, in that model I just showed you, that continuation with support that enables them to keep coming back, so to speak. And then avidity begets avidity. The more you go, the more you'll go. And so, again, those cards play a significant role in raising funds for conservation. I am going to show you all. Don, do I just hit the, if I want to show them this, is it just the green button? It is supposed to be. Well, if we can, I'm going to show you this here in just a minute, but I'll just point out, we have used that money in that Oklahoma Marketing Fund for a range of those types of projects I just told you about. But in addition to that, the Oklahoma Marketing Fund can serve as a landing spot for things like grants that we get through national grant programs and whatnot. This past year, we received a grant from the Association for Conservation Information to do projects, marketing projects that promote hunting and fishing. And we were able to use that fund, and the fund is made possible by the hard cards, to develop a series of hunting and fishing videos that they're sort of like commercials that promote hunting and fishing. We were able to use our own game warden, Ben Half, to feature his love of waterfowling, and I was going to see if I could show that to you. It doesn't look like that's going to work.
Don't you have it posted on the website or something, maybe? Or?
Yeah, it was supposed to just come up with a play button, but it doesn't look like we're going to get there.
Okay.
If it would work, I'd love to show you kind of some of what this fund has allowed us to do.
No, it doesn't look like the video.
Yeah, it may not work, but I would love to email that to you maybe, or show that to you some other way. But again, we've used that to produce a series of videos that can be used to encourage people. Just, again, it's another form of artwork. It's just artwork, again, in a video form. We've been talking about paintings, but this is a production that showcases the beauty of the outdoors, the joys of hunting and fishing, from the perspective of one of our state's hunters, and it just so happens to be one of our game wardens. And if Dawn, if that doesn't work, that's fine. I'll be happy to email that to you so that y'all can take a look at what those are. But anyway, thank you, Nora, and of course Carolyn, who's not here, but appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
You could
you.
look on the website.
Madam Chairman,
yeah.
if I may, I was extremely excited to see Carolyn's name getting this recognition. Carolyn is my neighbor, and she has a clear gift for drawing large animals, and a nicer lady, more dedicated artist you will not find. So I certainly echo Commissioner Barwick's sentiments on this. This art is kind of the next best thing to the real thing, and appreciate everybody's efforts on this. But I would point out that with Mr. Donahue and the efforts of the Sutton Avian Research Center and of course Carolyn, it appears that the lion's share of the talent lies up in the 1st District.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And I would encourage you again to get on the website if you want to see that video. I believe it's on there, and that would be.
I think we put the links to it in last month's director's report. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 links. Ben Half was one of them, yeah.
Thank you again, Michael. Okay. Next, we have Amanda Stork, financials.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce David Sawyer with Definity. He's going to talk to us about last year's actuary. Dawn, did you get that presentation? You all got the handout.
It'll look like this.
Are we going through the experience study
No.
or the
The,
actuarial valuation?
actuarial valuation.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Sawyer. I'm the actuary for the retirement plan, and wanted to present the results of this year's actuarial valuation. And the purpose of the valuation we perform every year is to determine the contribution requirements for this plan. And one of the things that will be obvious is that a 20% rate of return does wonders for your plan's funded status and for reducing contributions. So I guess that's the highlights of this year. Do you all have it? I can just start talking if, okay.
Is his microphone on?
Okay.
Is it on?
I think it's on. I'm not sure.
So if you flip forward to just page 3, just kind of summarizes the process. So, you know, we gather data, we gather asset information, we make a number of assumptions, and we look at your plan provisions, excuse me, and we put this all in your model. And the purpose of this is to project out the future benefits that are going to be paid out forever in this plan. And then we discount them back to today and compare them to the assets, and based on that, we can make a contribution recommendation for the following year. So if you flip to page 4, a couple of key takeaways. So for this cycle, there were no changes to the underlying plan provisions. They were the same as the year before. The funded ratio, so in other words, the actuarial value of assets divided by the liability, was 93%. So if you looked at fair value, and we'll talk briefly about the difference there of assets, you were actually over 100% funded if you looked at fair value of assets. But we don't do that for contribution purposes. We use what's called an actuarial value of assets, kind of smooths returns. When you have great years, it kind of defers some of those gains, and you have bad years, it kind of defers some of those losses. So based on the measures that we do, you were 93% funded, and you were 88% funded last year. And we were predicting that you would be 91% this year. So again, primarily because the assets did well, the funded status in this plan is improving more than we would have expected. So based on all that, the contribution requirements for the next year are $2.2 million, so down from what you're currently contributing of $2.7 million. So last year you actually had $4.3 million into the plan, but there was a one-time COLA in there as well that caused $1.6 million extra. So that's why last year's was so much more. Is this on? Okay. 4. So the last thing on this page is just to note that the funded status has improved dramatically over the last 10 years. And when we get to the point where you're actually 100% funded, we need to revisit your funding policy, because part of your funding policy requires you to amortize your unfunded liability. So to the point there isn't any, we'll have to revisit that and come up with a new funding policy. Slide 5. So again, the market value got a 22, almost 23% rate of return last year, but on an actuarial value, the smooth return was about 10.6. So there's still some great news out there that hasn't even been recognized yet. So I know the market hasn't been doing very well this year, but there's some extra cushion in there for adverse deviation if that happens this year. Same assumptions were used this year as last year, but we just met with the Finance Committee earlier, and we have some recommended assumptions. Those would go into effect for the next year. So when we come out and present next year, that would reflect those. So this valuation that we're presenting today is the same assumptions as last year. Okay, slide 6 just shows the participants. Pretty overall, pretty stable population, number of participants. Slide 7. So this is the rate of return, and this gives you a visual as to why we want to smooth asset returns in our calculations for contribution requirements. The line that's all over the place, that's the fair market value. You don't want your contributions to fluctuate that much from year to year, so that's why you use that smooth actuarial value. But you can see returns last year were just phenomenal, and they've actually exceeded the assumption over the last 10 years, so we feel pretty good about that particular assumption, which is one of the key assumptions in our model. This next graph just shows the relationship between the actuarial value and the fair value. You can see that right currently, because the assets did so good last year, the actuarial value is about 90% of what the actual market or fair value of assets was. So you can see because last year was so good, there's a gap, bigger gap there than we've had in any of these years in the past. Next slide. Okay, so here's the key slide that shows how the contributions required calculation is determined. So we had actuarial liability, just think of that as the present value of the benefit promise as of today, about $138 million. You had $128 million of assets for this calculation, so you had about $10 million of unfunded. So we amortized that payment over a 10-year period, and that amortization was about $1.3 million. Then there's what's called the next part of the bar there, NC, the normal cost. That's the present value of the benefits that are being earned this year for your active participants in the plan. So you sum those up in total, and it was about $2.8 million. And of that amount, the members are expected to contribute about $577,000, so that leaves about $2.2 for the department to fund. So again, last year it was 2.7, so down quite a bit from what was contributed the current year. Okay, then this is just a graph to show you historically, even with some of that asset smoothing that we've been talking about, contribution requirements do bounce around from year to year. That's the nature of being the sponsor of a defined benefit pension plan. You're the ones that are on the hook for good or bad experience, and that's why that the returns can be, the calculation of the contributions can bounce around quite a bit. But you can see the good news here is that for next year, the contribution is required is about $2.2 million. So down quite a bit from the year before. And then finally, this is just a projection. If things kind of just go as expected under our model, we're about 92.9% funded this year. And because we have those deferred asset gains that are sitting out there, if you can earn 7% over the next couple of years, you can see that funded status is going to approach 100% within 2 years. So let's hope we can get that kind of return over there and hit that 100% funded status target would be ideal. And if that happens, not only do we need to readdress the funding policy, but you probably want to have conversations with your investment advisor to decide whether or not you want to continue to take as much risk in your portfolio as you currently have, keeping in mind that there's no new participants going into this plan. So once you get 100% funded, you may want to be a little more conservative in your asset allocation. So that's a discussion, an important discussion that you should have with your investment advisor. I believe that's it. Any questions on the results of the process or anything?
Any questions for Dave or Amanda? Thank you, David. Okay, and Amanda, we've got another presentation by Dan.
So up next is Dan Bledsoe with Finley & Cook. He's going to review last year's, the FY21 audit.
Nope. Good morning. I met earlier this morning with the Finance Committee and did a pretty detailed overview of the the financial statements. I thought I'd try to maybe keep this presentation a little more brief and just give the overview of the results of the audit. But this was the department's audit for the year ended June 30th, 2021. So this covered a financial statement audit for that year end, as well as a compliance audit related to the major federal programs for that year. We issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements, so they are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Did not have any findings related to the compliance on the major federal programs, and so basically from our test work, those were following the guidelines as specified under the federal uniform guidance requirements. In terms of doing the audit work, we have to gain an understanding of your internal controls, kind of your key checks and balances as far as your financial reporting processes. Did not have anything to report on that as far as a significant deficiency or material weakness in the internal control structure or how that was implemented and utilized during the year, so nothing to report there. Did not identify any fraud issues as part of our test work, so always good to be able to report that, as well as no violations of any laws or regulations were identified in performing our audit test work. So overall process went real well. It was a clean audit. We appreciate, obviously, the staff providing all the information to do that work. So with that, I'll kind of open up and see if any of the commissioners have any questions on that process.
Any questions from the commission? One place where nothing to report is very good. Yeah, always like to hear that. No other questions? No. Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it. And Amanda has our financials for January.
So first I was going to report to you our license information, just as good a time as any. So our recreational licenses, our number of licenses sold is up 31% for February over 2021 sales. Our lifetime licenses are up 13%, and February was much better in 2022 than 2021, which is positive compared to January. So March is off to a similar start. And I'll go ahead and move into our financial statements. For the period July 1 through January 31, 2022. So our combined balance sheet for all fund types and account groups, we have a total liability and fund balance of $485,220,135, of which $284,510 is liabilities. That's compared to last year, $467,847,475. Our combined balance sheet for our total expendable trust, our balance is $40,863,221. Our non-expendable trust balance is $98,707,588. Our pension trust is $138,304,514, and our DC trust is $6,213,284 for a total of $284,088,607. That's compared to last year of $269,358,381. For this fiscal year, our total revenue today is $34,702,986. Our total expenditures is $38,964,322 for a deficit of $4,261,336. Our fund balance is $61,473,183. A 15.46% increase over last year. Our activity and our trust fund balance for the fiscal year, our non-expendable trust operating revenue is $2,165,905. Our pension trust is $1,710,660. DC trust is $481,035 for a total of $4,357,600. And that compares to last year of $23,280,301. Operating income for the fiscal year is a negative $850,048. Our contributions this month, we have 25,000 total, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Amanda or discussion?
And I think that 25,000's a grant from the NRA for
Yes.
gun range at Pack Saddle. Yeah.
Is that our first one from NRA?
Huh? Oh, okay, good. Peter from NRA will, okay.
Good.
Is that our first one from the NRA?
No, no. We've got, go ahead, Nels.
For that item and one other, so.
So do we need to wait to accept it until then?
I think they've already accepted the money, but.
Yeah. Take the money while we can.
Do we need to vote on that now?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion to?
I move to accept the donation.
Second? Roll call.
Mr. Barwick?
Aye.
Mr. Mabry?
Aye.
Mr. Holder?
Aye.
Mr. Dillingham? Mr. Kane? Mr. Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you, Amanda. Okay. Where did my thing go? Okay. All right. Next, we have JD with the Director's Report.
Thank you. Oh, we need to do minutes?
What? Okay, mine looks different. I guess I have a different copy. No, I guess, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We do need a motion to,
So moved. Second.
okay.
Mr. Barwick?
Aye.
Mr. Mabry?
Aye.
Mr. Holder? Mr. Dillingham? Mr. Kane? Mr. Gaddis?
Aye. Now, we have JD and the Director's Report.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Corey first to give us a report from the Capitol. Was not a great week for us last week, but there's still hope.
JD basically said everything I was gonna say, so. It was a deadline week last week, so, and good morning. I guess the good news is we knocked our list down from 50 bills to, I think we're at 23. We still have a few carryovers from last year. I think some were even our request bills, so I'm not sure they're gonna move much further. But the big news and the bad news is, we had some issues with our license bill, somewhat out of our control. So one bill actually failed in committee last Monday, and because of the scenario that led to that, which was essentially some opposition from a group and several emails to committee members opposing the bill, it died, and it kind of brought the House bill down with it. So the House bill didn't get a hearing and, of course, didn't make the committee deadline. So pretty unfortunate week that we had to deal with and early in session. So the good news is there are still 3 different licensed vehicles out there. 2 aren't bills that we requested, so if we do want to move some licensing stuff forward, we have some options, and we might have to kind of back off our full license authority language and maybe pick and choose what we want to work toward, but we are hoping to still maybe move in the direction of making some significant changes to licenses, but no matter what, it's going to take a pretty hefty bill to make changes in statute if that's the direction that we go. But I guess the optimistic view is we have some options still available. So, and then, other than that, there's a few bills that are a little bit concerning. One actually popped up in an amendment that strikes our restitution fees, and there's another bill that strikes some of our fines, and so we're working with those authors to let them know that those are penalties that we utilize and don't want to see stricken from statute. But other than that, I don't know that there's a ton of super concerning things that we haven't dealt with before. So, any questions?
Any questions?
I did get to end the week at a bear den, so I'm not too sad about everything, but, and we did get to bring some of our no votes with us, so hopefully they'll kind of maybe work in our favor in the future, but that's of course not the goal of the bear den, but it did end on a good note, I guess, so.
Yeah, and we're happy to talk offline, answer questions that anybody may have about specific legislation, but It's, not over till the last Friday in May, so stay tuned.
Got some time.
Yeah.
Yep, and our next deadline is the 24th of March, so they'll just be doing floor work for the next couple weeks, with, I think, a week of spring break, so a little bit slower pace, I think, hopefully, so we can catch up and kind of regroup and move on to the next step. So I will say, after I think we put the packets together, we do have a fish fry that we're scheduling for April 27th, so I'll make sure you guys get the invitation to that and love to have you at the Capitol. So, and Wade might need some help catching fish if you're interested, so,
All right.
yeah.
Want to
You
go
guys.
jug lining for catfish in Caw.
Pretty fun.
Let Wade know.
All
Okay,
right.
thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
Oh, question.
One question. On the no votes that were in attendance this weekend, did you leave them in the den?
I
It was
tried.
tempting, but
They
We
did ex-
appreciate all your
They
efforts.
did express concerns, but
Don't get
no.
too discouraged.
We kept them all safe.
Thank you, Corey.
we let them wake the bear up when we left. I'll let you read Brittany's report from the federal level at your leisure. I'm gonna keep mine a little short this morning, a little bit under the weather up here, but just skimming through the director's report that you have. Let me know certainly if you have any questions about anything. Lots going on in all divisions, maintenance-wise. Getting the Paddlefish Research Center up and running for the upcoming paddlefish season, which you all have the opportunity to see and tour firsthand at next month's commission meeting, which will be up in Miami. I did skip over some dates there. Make sure you look at the dates there of the upcoming Scholastic Shooting Sports shoots that will be happening across the state if you're interested in any of that. As well as the finals, which will be out at April 13th out at Banner. I did want to point out, because Michael mentioned earlier, the sales from the hard card portion of those going into a marketing fund that we've been able to leverage to do some great things. Brandt, our license provider, provided their 2021 revenue report to us, and through the emails and push notifications and digital ads, we generated over $3.5 million from those marketing efforts in 2021. So that is impressive. And Oklahoma was featured in a recent MSN article. The link is in the director's report as a top 10 state in number of hunters. We're ranked number 6 in the nation in, I think it's a per capita ranking, but nonetheless, 6th in the nation in the percentage of our population that are engaged in hunting. So,
What was that percentage? You remember?
what was it close? Seems like it's close to 13%. Think it was higher than that?
I thought so.
Click the link. It's not clicking. We'll get you that number here in a second. Or is that the one that was almost 20%? Maybe that was the number. Anyway, I'll quit throwing numbers out there and we'll get the actual number. Lots of burning going on. We wish there was more burning going on, but there are burn bans in several of the drought-stricken areas of the state. There's a pic of the Oklahoma State and ODWC teams cranking up the pronghorn research out in the Panhandle. The helicopter crews captured 100 pronghorns in Texas and Cimarron counties and fitted them with GPS tracking collars, so they will be subject to continued research under this new research grant. A couple of interesting things to point out or impressive things to point out in law enforcement. Game Warden Larry Green in Osage County did rescue 3 duck hunters from Call Lake on January 19th. They were their boat got swamped in the big waves out there. They surely would have died of hypothermia if he and the Corps of Engineers ranger wouldn't have arrived to haul them out of the water and bring them back to safety. So great work, Game Warden Larry Green. Game Wardens Austin Jackson and Riley Willman in Craig and Delaware County were able to assist the Ottawa County Sheriffs with an accidental shooting investigation using knowledge they gained from Hunter Incident Investigation School to solve the case and find that somebody shooting at stray dogs several hundred yards away was the culprit for the bullet that traveled into this person's house and struck them. So, and Game Warden Kenny Lawson, who you may recall as being Game Warden of the Year most recently, and a couple of years ago, National Game Warden of the Year for National Wild Turkey Federation after a lengthy investigation. Busted a couple, I think from some hunters from Texas and Arkansas that resulted in numerous illegal deer and bear poaching, resulted in $7,000 in fines, suspension of license for 5 years because of the suspension in Arkansas that we will honor here. Anyway, a very sizable bust, and I will just stop there and say thank you to Micah for pulling up the percentage. 14.2% of residents have a paid hunting license. So that number is actually higher because there are youth and others that are exempt from having to have a paid hunting license, but 14.2%. Any questions?
Questions for JD?
All right, thank
Discussion?
you.
Yeah. Thank you, JD. Okay, Micah Holmes is the next presenter.
Is your mic on?
Is that better?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, okay. Like I said, I can't get any closer.
Hey, I'm getting old, but
Okay, Joe Alexander, Jeff Tibbetts, and many of those folks are in the audience today.
yeah,
Some of them
stand
are
up when he.
posted up on the back row there. Joe Alexander, Jeff Tibbetts, Daniel Griffith, Shelby Jeter, Kelly Adams, Alex Cooper, Spencer Grace, Michael Bergen, Smokey Solis, Lindsey Presley, Todd Craighead, Dallas Barber, Rick Grunman, Ethan House, Terry Stewart, and Jeremiah Duck.
Okay, now stand up because he just went way too fast for anybody. Whack-a-mole. There they are. Thank you all.
So we started a invitation to bid process this past July, and you know, you never know what you're going to get when you go out to bid for a project, and we got 14 of the best branding and marketing organizations, I feel like, in the region, in the nation, really. So we were fortunate enough to land Idea Ranch. Idea Ranch is with us here today, and they're going to be walking us through the process. Idea Ranch is located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one of the things we often kind of worry about when we hire an outside company is, are we going to have to explain the difference between the whitetail and mule deer? Are we going to have to, you know, tell them why bobwhite quail are so important to us in the state? We didn't have to do any of that with Idea Ranch. They live and breathe hunting and fishing, so we just hit the ground running right away. They have some excellent clients in the outdoor arena, folks like Carhartt and Under Armour and Bushnell and many more. You can see the website to see why they're so well thought of. in the business. So before I introduce the folks at ID Ranch, I'd like to offer a chance for Rick Grumman to come up and tell us the foundation's involvement in this process. Rick?
Good morning, Commissioners. The Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Foundation was brought into the conversations about it, and the board immediately saw the need to co-brand with the department on whatever the final outcome was. There was no predetermination on whether there would be a change or not be a change. But when you looked at best industry practices, having the foundation co-branded and having a similar look, feel, flavor, for lack of a better way to put it, is best in class and is something that we wanted to emulate. So the foundation agreed to co-brand with the department, financially back it, and also be actively engaged and involved in the process. I thought it was an outstanding process. Everyone involved was open, candid, and I think came forward with a really great product, and really appreciate the opportunity to be involved, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Yeah, we're really proud to have the foundation really in lockstep with us on what we're doing on the branding piece, and just didn't want you to miss that they have some skin in the game. The foundation did. They financially backed this project too. So, Matt Whitman has been with ID Ranch for a number of years and is going to walk us through the process of what we've been through these past 6 months.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Commissioners, thank you for having us here today. I appreciate it. And to the committee, thank you so much for all your hard work and constant communication with us. It's a really great process, and we appreciate it. So as Don's kind of getting, I've got a PowerPoint to walk through. These past 6 months has been really great. We've worked with the committee to help understand where you currently were in terms of branding, logo, how people felt from the agency side, as well as constituents. One of the big things that we wanted to undertake with this project was to get a sense for the numbers, the data, the research, what people were saying from your constituency, what people were saying within the agency, and what people were saying that had skin in the game, that were hunters and fishers and wildlife enthusiasts and conservationists in the state of Oklahoma, and even in the surrounding regions, so Texas, Nebraska, people that are constituents of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation. And so today we're going to walk through some of that process with you. So the first couple slides that we're going to walk through are research-based. This is very high-level research, so you're not going to see the 100-page deck of all the data today. I don't think any of us have 12 hours to go through all those decks today, but I'm going to give you the high-level pieces that helped us arrive at the decisions that we arrived at for the branding project itself. And so to have to turn it on. Very good. The on button works sometimes. So kind of today we're going to walk through external research, so the research that we did externally, internal research, so within the agency itself, what brand direction we arrived on, and then we're going to go through a little bit of the brand book that we've kind of got a good bit done on that already. So from an external research perspective, our mission was to first of all determine recognition of the logo within the state and surrounding states. Once we did that, we also wanted a good understanding of the constituents in the state of Oklahoma. So we did a survey, so a quantitative survey within your email database, your social media database, so people who are consumers of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation. And so a couple of different external studies, mainly to understand the brand recognition and the brand position of the ODWC within the constituents that you currently have. So we had the first survey that we sent out was a brand recognition survey, and the methodology there in which we arrived at was we wanted to serve the existing logo in various forms just to see where people started to recognize the current logo. So we would serve them quantitatively, so on the computer. We served folks that lived in Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, primarily Oklahoma hunters and fishers. So they had to mark that they were wildlife enthusiasts, conservationists, hunters, fishers to even get to this part of the survey. But so we served them different portions of the logo. We served them the shield, shield with the ribbon, shield with the Oklahoma shield and the ribbon, and then finally Oklahoma Department of, just to see how recognizable the current logo is. This is kind of the respondent pool who participated in the survey. As you can see, the top two were resident hunters and resident anglers. We did have some other participants that were outside of the state or people that were wildlife or conservation enthusiasts. When we served them the first logo, or the shield, the blue without the ribbon, or Oklahoma, or any other identifying factors, we asked them two questions, and two questions only. The first question was, do you recognize this logo? 40% of the people that took the survey said, yes, we recognize this logo. But that doesn't really prove anything to me. I need them to tell me what that logo is. So then when you ask them the question, all right, you said yes, what do you think this logo is? Only about 15% of the people said, oh yeah, this is the ODWC. And we took a lot of variants of that. We didn't just take ODWC or Oklahoma Wildlife. We took, hey, wildlife logo or game warden logo. If they got close, we counted it. So on the blue shield itself, only 15% said yes, so that's initial answer, an adjusted answer. When we gave them the ribbon, pretty similar respondent pool said yes, and again, only 15% said yes, and I know exactly what it is. When we asked them, oh my gosh, we throw up the Oklahoma shield, of course, 60% increased quite significantly, said yes. But when we tallied the overalls, only 30% actually got it correct. That increased slightly when you add Department of, and so it's about 40% brand recognition. Interestingly enough, that tells us that the logo itself within recognition does not stand alone on itself unless accompanied with the words wildlife. And so that was some of the recognition piece of the logo. So got us thinking, okay, this is something that we need to consider from a branding perspective. The committee said, yes, absolutely, let's march towards what we need to do next. And so the next step would be quantitative research within our internal and external constituencies. So we sent out a survey that asked, hey, how do you feel about the logo? How do you feel about the brand? How do you feel about the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation? We got some really great responses back. This is a panel summary on who exactly took the survey. There were 3 surveys that went out to internal constituents or internal participants in the agency. External, so people that were subscribed to the email blast, social media. And then 3 would be the foundation as well. Each served a variation of the survey. And this is the result of that survey. So when we ask for ODWC top of mind association, and these are really great results. So a lot of this has to do with how we're communicating as a department, as an agency to your constituents. And so you can start to see both the external and the internal, so meaning the people that work at the ODWC as well as the people that are consumers and constituents of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife, mirror each other, which is really great. That means the communication efforts internally and externally are doing their job really well, which is really good to see. When you look at what is the role of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation, this is really great too. So when you look at, these are word clouds. So just to kind of explain what a word cloud is, word clouds are ways that we can project what a constituent or a respondent feels about what they're saying. So they type in these words. So these are unaided. So when you see a big word, hunt, fish, wildlife, outdoor, good, warden, and the same thing on the right side, that means that a constituent typed in this word unaided. They weren't served other words. And this is, the bigger the word, the bigger it is in association with other words. So it means it came up higher from a participation perspective than, say, the next word. So they are in relation to each other. So when you look at the role of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation, the one on the left is our external panel. Conserve resources, protect wildlife, preserve habitat, works really well. when you see the internal, when it manage fish, manage wildlife, a lot of manage, protect, conserve, and it's the same thing in the external. So the communication vehicles that you guys are implementing are working really well. And the branding efforts, so if I'm to read into this data, the branding effort should be complementary to the current communication and education efforts that the department is instituting. Public perception of the ODWC. So we asked everybody who works at the department, hey, what do you feel externally that people are saying? What do you feel that is the perception of the department? And so overwhelmingly, game warden was what a lot of folks internally thought that everybody else on the outside thought about the department. The wildlife agency, things like that. So as you start to see the rest of the data from a qualitative perspective, so we did a lot of surveys, some focus groups, things like that, you'll start to see that as a theme as well. We then dove into the logo sentiment. This is an interesting slide where you talk about, hey, how do you feel about the current logo? So regarding the ODWC logo, do you believe it accurately reflects the mission of the ODWC, and should it remain moving forward? It's actually pretty split internally speaking. And so we think that's an interesting result, but there's a lot of folks that want to move forward with it, a lot of folks that want to see change. So overwhelmingly, pretty split. When we ask the questions of, hey, rank the current statements for the ODWC logo, you can start to see this play out if you will, the split becoming pretty clear. So does it represent the role of the ODWC to the public? Pretty split there. Easy to recognize as a fish and wildlife agency. Some strongly agree, some strongly disagree. If you look at the current logo itself, I would not say that looks like wildlife conservation outside of the words that are in the ribbon. Are they easy to read words? Do they represent the agency well? And so you can start to see a little bit of a split internally speaking. So all that to say, we found logo recognition not so high. Internally, it's kind of split. But the good news about a lot of the data is that the communication points that you guys are implementing are working really well. So we want to complement that with the branding efforts.
And all that logo sentiment stuff went out before there was an alternative to look at.
That's correct.
Right? So it's just, what do you think about it? Like it or not, there's not another alternative for you to look at that might change your mind.
Right, and the other thing that I would say, JD, is you're absolutely right. The other thing that I would say is that I would actually, when you look at the data and see that kind of sentiment on one side of the logo or the other, it's actually more of a compliment to the brand of the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation than necessarily the logo mark itself. So I would compliment the efforts of the education, communication, and the agency itself, all the great efforts that are happening, as an affirmation of people really wanting to be fans of the brand itself. So yeah, for sure. The next piece we did some qualitative research. So we did a lot of interviews with internal stakeholders as well as foundation members. You can start to see just where those interviews took place, who in the agency we interviewed, or who in the at least the different departments and the divisions. We wanted to make this really balanced and fair across the different divisions or the different stakeholders within the ODWC. So what we found, and I'll just give you high level data here. We've got Word documents after Word documents of results that I'm sure Mike has combed through extensively, but I'll give you the high level, okay? So positive perception from constituents. Our panel believes that the public trusts the ODWC. We see that in the data too. So very positive perception from our constituents. Heavy attention to game wardens, like you saw on some of the word clouds. Hey, what is public perception like? Well, everybody thinks that we are game wardens. And so that was kind of a consistent theme from a lot of the internal folks. And then lack of complete knowledge. So said differently, lack of understanding of exactly what the ODWC does from a public perspective. And so we asked, hey, what's the one thing that you want to get out of this effort from a branding perspective? And these were some of the high-level results. We want people to trust us. We want to continue to gain trust and momentum in that department for our constituents. We want people to know that the ODWC, what we are doing, provides opportunity for our constituents. We want them to know exactly what we do, what all tells the complete story for the ODWC. And so, finally, that we're funded by and partnered with sportsmen, that this doesn't just happen because of federal money coming down. We are funded by the people that are our constituents, and we want partnered with them as well. We want people to know that. So that's the things that people want out of this. From a branding elements perspective, so we asked them about the logo, the colors, some of the things with regards to the logo. Again, logos favor game wardens. You'll see that consistently throughout some of the answers here. Logo doesn't communicate the agency mission. The current logo, very Oklahoma, but doesn't necessarily communicate what we do outside of the words wildlife conservation. Difficult to read. Now we have a logo here that's blown up, 10 times, and logos here, but ultimately the elements in the logo are difficult to read and difficult. So the example came out, you guys several years ago had a bobber. Anybody remember this? Raise your hand. Yep, bobber. You have to kind of have a magnifying glass to see that that's, what the logo represents. And so, in essence, it's difficult to read. Current logo is difficult to read. There were mixed feelings, if we're all being honest, on updating the logo. You have people here that served under that banner for 40 years, and that's a tough thing to say, well, let's redo it. So if we're going to do it, let's make sure we're honoring the efforts of the people the past 40 years and really building into what the mission of the organization is and something that we can all be proud of. So key takeaways from all the quantitative research or qualitative research. Desire for depth and breadth of the ODWC brand story to be told at every level. We want to make sure from a game warden to a biologist to an administrative worker to communication and education that everybody is telling the story from a depth and breadth perspective, that folks are knowing the mission and communicating the mission. We want to make sure that we're reinforcing trust, that anything we do builds trust with the public and with our constituents. The desire for brand logo and brand exploration. After all the research and after all the discussions, the committee and the agency came to the recommendation of, okay, we need to explore what alternate logos and a brand might look like, and then test those. And I'll get into the testing here in a little bit. The logo doesn't reflect what the agency does or represents, that the shield and current elements favor law enforcement, not necessarily complete wildlife conservation, and the logo is difficult to read across multiple mediums. From an agency audit, so from a advertising perspective, as we have some of our best and brightest folks that have been doing advertising for national brands for 40 years, here's when we look at the logo, what we see. Come to the same conclusion you guys do, that it does not communicate what the agency does. There are other state agencies that incorporate wildlife or elements that help tell that story. The agency name is difficult to read on smaller applications. I put the bobbers up there. Sorry, whoever did the bobbers. I don't mean to pick on you.
Corey.
Yeah. They were great bobbers. I thought it was awesome. My kids went to you had a Tulsa fishing day, I think, last year, and we had the bobber out there too. So awesome idea. Just hard to read the logo. Logo is outdated from a color perspective and could use a modern color scheme. Mike was talking about this earlier, that's kind of was the initial direction to, hey, we need a branding agency to come in and look at this. We came to the same conclusion. So, just to give you a brief rundown without a bunch of 100,000 slides, we took all the research, we took all the understanding from the committee, and we decided, okay, we're going to develop a series of logos and branding elements and present that before the committee. So we came down here, about 4 months ago, something like that, walked through all the different iterations of the logo, branding elements, presented the research and said, hey, we think these 6 or 8 or however many it was, logos that we're presenting in different iterations and graphic elements represent the mission, what we're trying to accomplish. And then we had a series of, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 revisions where where we either took an element from this logo and took an element from this logo and combined it, or adjusted a logo in some form or fashion, or came up with some new logo options. And so we really arrived at 4 logos that were different variations and stages. We had, and I won't show you the logos because I don't want you to fall in love with them. But yeah, but we had several logos that we kind of arrived at as, hey, we could be okay with any of these being a part of who we are as an agency. And so we took those 4 logos and we did some testing against them with our constituents in Oklahoma. And so we had focus groups in which we basically presented the logos, every 4 of them. And the results were pretty overwhelming to the logo that we've arrived on. Some people said that they like this logo better and this logo better, but ultimately the logo that we are going to present to you today is the logo that overwhelmingly was chosen by those focus groups as well as the committee itself. It was kind of the one chosen above all the rest of them. And honestly, from an agency perspective, so from an ad agency perspective, does the best job at communicating what we're trying to accomplish. And so once research confirmed the recommendation, once we all agreed upon the recommendation and tweaked it slightly, we arrived at the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation logo. Ooh, yeah. So just a couple of high-level pieces of the logo itself. So the shape with the arrowhead speaks to Oklahoma's unique history and also subliminally suggests the pursuit of game. We thought it was a nod towards our heritage and our tradition in the state of Oklahoma for the shape, and we feel like it communicates that pretty well. The colors, a little bit more natural in tone than the bright blue that we had. Again, the colors communicate something about what our mission is as a department, as an agency. A little bit more natural, speak to the mission. We've got 3 species represented within this logo that represent kind of each of the departments and the efforts done within the ODWC. So you got a whitetail, you got a scissortail, you've got a white bass. And so kind of represent, and they're the most popular or recognizable species in the state as well. And so we thought that these were the species that best represented our efforts as a department, as well as the state of Oklahoma. And then finally, a little bit more balance on the wording. And we've got some iterations here that kind of showcase how to do this logo, and you'll see in your brand book, with larger wording, with smaller wording. But the primary logo, which is what you're looking at, a pretty balanced wording. Oklahoma is large enough to read from very far away, so you still know it's Oklahoma. But wildlife conservation is really big, and that is kind of the key takeaway from the current logo is without the words, without the pictures, it's hard to really tell. So we wanted to make sure to emphasize wildlife conservation. And so this is the logo that we would recommend going forward with. We've got brand books. I don't know how, Kyle, we pass those to the commissioners. So we've got brand books for you guys to look at. The brand books are effectively what those do. Mission is twofold with the brand books. One, it's a really nice piece to have out in each of the ODWC offices across the state, whether that be guests coming in, whether that be constituents visiting, as well as instilling pride with the folks that work in those specific offices. We're presenting to you today a bound piece. We actually recommend kind of a hardbound book once we get approval to move forward. A really nice printed piece. So one is to instill pride and help the folks within the ODWC, our internal people, to communicate why we are an organization and what we do, but also the branding elements and the wording and the language that we want to make sure that when we do this presentation in 5 to 10 years, when we're looking back from a research perspective, we can see that the people that are clicking those buttons to say externally, this is what we know that the ODWC does, that those match exactly what we're trying to communicate out within the book, within the communications and education departments, that we're hitting on all those cylinders. And lastly, it is a piece that helps understand how to go about branding and styles. So understanding what the email signature should be, what the template should be for a letterhead, how to use the logo and communications, whether that be PowerPoints moving forward, whether that be on signage, on the side of trucks. We work pretty close with the law enforcement side of things to make sure that these logo elements were represented right within the confines of the trucks that you currently have, within the boats that you currently have. And so it's a pretty comprehensive book from a style perspective, as well as a messaging perspective. We want to make sure that both those, all that stuff is a part of the brand. When I interviewed kind of everybody in on the committee or outside of the committee, wanted to make sure to communicate your logo is not the only thing that represents your brand. It's your message, it's who you are, it's how you speak about yourself and your agency. And we wanted a brand book to communicate that. And so you've got, I don't know how many pages it is, but let's call it 70 pages worth of information and messaging that helps communicate who you are and who your brand is. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Micah, or if there are any questions from the commissioners.
I just might mention too that, you know, you don't have a hardbound version today because, you know, while we have shared stuff with you along the way, we want to make sure we've got commission approval before we finalize things. Plus, there are still some tweaks happening in the background, including, we were hoping to take a full commission picture to put on page 23 in place of that pic. But we don't have the full commission yet again, so we may have to play around with a individual profile pics or something on that page just to make it all work. So, but that's just one of several tweaks left to do to finalize it.
Yeah. Any other questions or discussion? I have to admit, at first I wasn't all crazy about the change. You know, nobody really likes change, but after watching and getting a little bit involved in the process and realizing what I, you know, hadn't given any thought to, I really like it. It's very good. I think it's very worthwhile and does the job. I understand it a lot better than I did.
Appreciate it.
Does anybody know on the current logo how that came about? Do you have any research on that?
Yeah.
It came about in the 1960s. And I don't know any details exactly about that, but it was the 1960s when it was initiated. Before that, it was a different logo.
I guess basically they
just took the flag.
They took the flag,
Yeah.
made a shield out of it.
Yeah.
There was actually, somebody showed me an old story. I don't know if it was out of Outdoor Oklahoma magazine back then or.
Colin Berg shared that with us, article.
Yeah.
Didn't reference the exact.
Right.
So it's been in use since the 60s? Is that when it came about?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. It's time for change.
Time to change,
Time for an
that's right.
update.
And I might also add, you know, once we've got approval, assuming we have approval, and we're ready to march forward with that as the brand, the team will next be working on the phase-in, the implementation, and that often, you know, creates anxiety within our troops because they're like, are you going to make us replace all 2,000 signs or whatever we have out there on the landscape by next week? Or you know, because that's just going to be drop everything you're doing to make it happen. And so there is a lot that goes into the planning and phase in of that. And we've assured staff, we'll assure you as well, that it'll be a reasonable phase in, that everybody can continue to get their day jobs done, so to speak, and it won't break the bank too. It'll cost us quite a bit of money when you think about rewrapping vehicles and redoing signage at all of our wildlife management areas and fishing areas and hatcheries and everything else. So we expect it'll be a fairly lengthy phase in, but we definitely want to, you know, look forward to getting it rolled out as quickly as we can.
Matt, in your experience, what is a normal time period for transition in an organization this large?
Yeah, I mean, it's years, speaking frankly, in terms of getting signage, like if you think of all the signage and some of the wildlife areas that need to be changed. I mean, you're looking at a year's process, at least a couple. I would say that focusing on the low-hanging fruit items and the direction that Micah and his team are already going. So thinking about letterhead and, you know, your online presence, your social media presence, your email signatures, communicating that out to your internal agency as well as your external constituents, making sure that you're able to communicate that out, but also communicating that you're not going to see this on every sign where you go in hunting this fall, but certainly several years to get every little thing implemented. But I would start as soon as you get approval on the logo to start implementing it with some of your lower hanging fruit, and you can get that going within months, not years. But you know, and I would say within probably 6 months, Micah, you can start to look at, you know, the vehicles and things like that as you approach fall.
Would you have like an unveiling event to get the word out to the public once this is approved? I mean, a big kind of a mass press release or something that goes out?
We have a transition plan that we're working on, and part of that, after today, we'll pick a date, maybe in the next couple weeks, as far as we're gonna unveil this out to the public. We're excited about it. There's some things that are real easy to do. We can change it on social media and the website. Business cards, things like that are pretty easy, and let folks know this is gonna be coming, over time. But yeah, it's certainly something we wanna celebrate and have started to think through all of the little things that need to happen next.
I might also mention, commissioners and staff, to buckle up when that does unveil, because invariably, as keen as we may be on the logo, there are always detractors and naysayers. And if you saw the unveiling of the Oklahoma Imagine That rebranding, I mean, there was vitriol and hatred effusive for, I think, months in the wake of that on social media and otherwise. So we expect to have some of that, hopefully not near as much as Imagine That had, but.
I think if you communicate out the primary reasons for it, when you think about the communicating of the mission, and you know, sort of things that along that lines, the old logo being harder to read, it's kind of an easy transition for consumers if you're positioning it that way. You know, and so that's how I would focus and make sure you're keeping the message on the point.
If you look at the current one, it has nothing to do with conservation.
No, they just, somebody sent me the page out of the October 1965 Outdoor Oklahoma, and it just, about the new logo adorning the department vehicles and stuff, and it just goes on and on about the elements of the Oklahoma flag, basically. The Osage shield, and it's like, well, that's cool. That's good for our state flag, but.
It's interesting that this was never brought up since the 60s, you know, that.
And I wonder if there were any other agencies that did the same thing way back then that have eventually evolved to what we know them today. I don't know.
A great job. I mean, that's pretty thorough.
Do we know, are there any requirements outside of approval from the commission for an agency branding change like this? Have we looked into that?
No, I did get cabinet secretary approval before we went out for bid and started rolling through the project, because, you know, the state had essentially rolled out its own new branding at about that same time, and so I wanted to make sure we weren't going to hit that buzzsaw at some point. So we did get that approval ahead of time.
That's good.
And then, if approved, what kind of, like, copyright, trademark do we need to do, if any, on that?
Yeah, that'll happen next too.
Our current shield is copyrighted and trademarked. We just actually did that about 10 years ago. And if this is approved, we'll work through the process of getting that done, because we certainly want to protect it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll even see a page in towards the back on logo approval process, which we're gonna also bring up in the Rules Committee after this commission meeting, but yeah, that'll be part of it.
Anything else? Any other questions or thoughts?
Any other questions for Matt or Mike?
Long overdue. Have we checked to see if there's any other states that have the arrowhead?
Yeah, so there are other departments and agencies that utilize a letterhead, or utilize an arrowhead. Ours is, so there are, you know, we did put it against like the state highway patrol, you know, the National Forest.
National Park Service.
Yeah, National Park Services. So there are other organizations that utilize it. Ours is a little bit more unique in its presentation than those. We wanted to make sure to differentiate it from the others that utilize that shape.
Think there'll be a trademark problem with that?
No,
Mm-mm.
no, sir. So,
I don't think so.
Again, thank you. It's an honor for our agency to be a part of this. Like Mike had mentioned, we are a company full of hunters and fisher and wildlife enthusiasts and conservationists, and it's our privilege and honor to work with you guys and the committee as well. So thank you for allowing this.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate you. Any other questions? So,
I make a motion that we approve the logo as presented.
okay, roll call.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham?
Aye.
Commissioner Kane?
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Any further discussion?
All right.
Okay.
Thank
motion
you.
carries. Thank
Historic
you.
event.
Yeah.
And again, great job to the committee getting us here, because I've sat in on a lot of the sausage making, and it was, it was sausage making.
All right, great. Okay, next item, we've got our next meeting scheduled for Monday, April 4th, and it is to be held in Miami, Oklahoma. Any new business that was unforeseen in the last 24 hours?
Nope.
Well, with that, I would say our meeting is adjourned.
Rhonda, where do we?
Fishing, hunting, wildlife management, resource protection, habitat conservation, public outreach, and education.
It's what we do. It's what we live for.
Simply put, conserving wildlife literally means the wise use of wildlife. And that's at the root of everything we do. Oklahoma is one of the most species-diverse states in the nation. Making sure opportunities exist for hunters, anglers, and all those who appreciate wildlife is not only our job.
It's our passion.
We are your Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. From sunup to sundown, and sometimes all night long. The employees of our agency are relentless in their dedication to a job well done. The science behind wildlife conservation is constantly evolving, and our biologists are leading the way with groundbreaking and cutting-edge techniques that the entire scientific community benefits from. If that's not enough to make you proud, then consider this. We've been doing all this since our agency's birth in 1909, without using a dime of taxpayer money. That's because the Wildlife Department is designed as a user-pay, user-benefit agency. It's sportsmen and wildlife enthusiasts who pay the bill for wildlife conservation in Oklahoma. Revenue from the sale of hunting and fishing licenses make up the majority of the agency's budget. There's also another unique way that outdoorsmen contribute financially. Each time someone buys a gun, ammunition, fishing equipment, or fuel for their boat, a small portion of the tax they pay at the register is used for wildlife conservation. But hunters and anglers don't just contribute financially. A long time ago, we recognized that sportsmen are our most effective management tool. Shaping regulations and making sure everyone complies to them has played a major role in bringing many species back from